Here's a quick look into today's episode.
It wasn't until I came out of that JPMRC OP4 rotation in October of 2024 that I felt like I could first see the vision for our battalion. It's like the clouds lifted. It's like, okay, all right. I've seen what I need to see, and now it's my turn. And I laid out the vision. People win, transform. Some of the listeners on here are going to laugh because I totally stole that from someone else, but made it our own. It's like, hey, it needs to be simple because I want everybody to understand it. People, that is our foundation. We're going to invest in our people. We're going to give them really hard training, but we're also going to take care of them in the lowest of lows, like they suffer something really terrible, but also in the highest of highs. We're going to come alongside them, celebrate their successes. Win. We're going to win the things that we intend to win. To try to win everything is foolish. It's like we're going to set our crosshairs on things that we intend to win. And the culture in our battalion, dating way back to well before I was even a lieutenant there, we are a competitive bunch, and winning is in the DNA of this battalion. And then the third one is transform. What are the things you can be the best in the world at? Came up with 3. I said, hey, H2F, lethal small UAS. We want to lead not just this division, but we want to lead the Army on the tactical employment of lethal small UAS. And the third one is the TAC. So that's fighting platform. This past summer, we had kind of a changing of the guard. A couple new company commanders come in. We had a new S6, 2 new AS3s. We had this whole new crop of folks coming in. We had one shot at some event that was going to bring them quickly into the fold as a member of the No Fear Battalion. When I was a lieutenant here twice, we went to Kauai and we hiked the Nepali coast. It's like 12 miles. It's very, very up, down, up, like lots of terrain, but it's a world-class hike. I mean, people fly from all over the world to do it. It's called the Kalalau Trail, and you have to buy a permit through the state, and in peak seasons, it's hard to get. Hey, how cool would that be if our whole battalion could do that? Like not our whole battalion, but all our leaders in the battalion. Company command, I was like, we got one shot, pulled it off. I could not believe that we were able to do it, but we did. My rule for the counselings was I do what's called a morale check the first 2 minutes of the counseling, and that's a hey, all things like work life, personal life, family life, social life, all things. How's morale on a 0 to 10 scale? Speak to what really matters. The average I get is an 8, and I say, okay, what's filling your cup? What's getting you up to an 8? What's the good things? And I say, okay, what's keeping you from a 10? And like, I listen really intently on that. My faith is super important, and I meet twice a week with Chad Taylor. We meet, we sync up, like, how's life? How can I pray for you? How can you pray for me? We get into scripture a little bit. That's an hour Tuesday and Thursday morning that we spend, before our families are awake. You can't put a price tag on that. Everybody can fall victim to like negative self-talk. Like something bad happens at work on a Monday afternoon or something. It might not be till Friday when we're going on the weekend that I have processed and like gotten over something, like maybe I'm angry the whole week. It stops on Tuesdays now.
Welcome to another episode of Teach Me to Fish, where our purpose is to help leaders better understand what drives people. In today's world, the core of recruiting and retaining talent revolves around leadership, and not just average leadership, but motivated, values-based, inspirational leadership. Our purpose is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories and stacking habits. Habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people.
The hardest part of this whole thing is going to be just getting through all this with you. I've been looking forward to doing this with you for a while now, because I've known you for a while, and every time like we go through something again together, I'm like, how am I going to incorporate that into this episode? There's so much, like I'm going to talk fast and you will talk fast, and like and really like I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you, and like I was just talking the other day, like, when are you going to do your next podcast coming out of JPMRC? And I was like, well, the first person I want to do it with is Tyler Patterson. Yeah. And not everybody knows why, but like the reason why, the reason why was because like we've been doing this together now for a couple of years, and you've kind of been listening to the podcast since it got started, and like, you know what I'm about, and we just kind of see eye to eye on like so many different things, and that's why I was looking forward to sharing like the conversations conversations that me and you have had with so many people that are out there that are listening right now, you know, but for Tyler Patterson, like, what do you hope that people think when they hear your name, people that know you?
Well, if you don't mind, I wanted to first just say, you know, hey, thanks for doing this podcast. You know, you've been doing this for a few years, and I'm one of the people that got off a lot of social media. Sometimes I'll get on it for a short period just to check on things and get off. But this has been one thing that I've continued to invest in, and it's really inspired me. You know, folks like General Williams, General Gerard, the chaplain you interviewed, Colonel Shaw, just great people. And so I appreciate you doing this, and flattered that you pulled me on the show. But yeah, I think when people hear my name, my desire is the first thing they think of is like that. Hey, that's a man of God. That's a godly man right there. You know, because I talk about it enough that they know when they come talk to me, I'm gonna talk about the foundation, the thing I anchor to. And so I think that's the first thing I want them to know. The second thing is that I care. I care deeply about people. And then similar to the way General Williams kind of said, I was like, you can't do better than that. Just like when people need me, I'm there.
Yeah.
You know, the same thing that he said, you know, when people pick up that phone, they call you, you'll be there. So I think that's what I want people to think when they think about me.
Yeah. Well, I can assure you, like, you know, there's so many people out there that know you, that I know. Chad Taylor the other day, he's like, we go to church together, you know. They always, sometimes they don't know that I already know who you are. And they're like, hey, I got somebody that we're thinking about for JPMRC. And I'm like, tell me who, you know? So like when they tell me your name, I'm like, no surprise. I've been thinking about that for a while now. What I want to go all the way back and like not skip forward to some of the things that there's so much that we want to talk about, but like before people want to hear kind of like some of your so whats and stuff like that, I think they want to know like who you are, how you got your start, and like why you joined the Army in the first place. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in Texas, so family of 6. I was a middle child, so the second oldest. And really, I had a pretty normal childhood, you know, good, loving family. My dad went to the Merchant Marine Academy, and then after serving for like 5 years, got out and became a civil engineer. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, you know, and just normal family, I think. When I reflect on my childhood, I have memories of really big family gatherings, you know, really centered around my grandparents. Mm-hmm. So my mom's mom, my grandma. We would have these huge gatherings for Thanksgiving and Christmas in Boyd, Texas. You know, it's about an hour drive from where we lived. But it was just, there's a lot of love, a lot of family. I always loved sports and gravitated towards those. And really that continued into high school. And then in high school, a lot of my experiences there were shaped by my wrestling team. And so I had a fantastic wrestling coach who unfortunately just passed recently, but Tony Warren was his name. And I had a lot of really good friends. And, you know, growing up in Texas, everybody really played football. So I played football too. I was probably 130 pounds, you know, and so had no place on the field, but was out there anyway, playing receiver and safety. But I kind of knew in the back of my head that wasn't going very far. And then one of my good friends by the name of Alan Starr, like his dad wrestled in college and got him into wrestling. And so, you know, we started kind of asking, and then sophomore year, you started to see this migration of football players come over. So it was me, my best friend growing up, Jesse Keenan. He was like, you know, it's probably like 175 pounds, just super strong. But we just started pulling folks from the football team over to the wrestling team to join Coach Warren. And it was really cool to watch our team transform from just a very mediocre Texas wrestling team, you know, to just a powerhouse. And what the coach did, you know, and so, I mean, normal stuff like tough practices, hard workouts. He got us into lifting. And it was really funny because it was junior year, came over sophomore year, junior year. Rumors start going around like, man, those wrestling guys, they're on steroids or something. They're all huge. And it was because the coach put us through such tough workouts and growth spurts and all that stuff happened around that time. But We had one recruit coming from Florida that was 215, was a state champion in Florida, was huge. And so I think he was driving that rumor. But the bottom line is it was really cool to watch that team grow. We won dual state championships my senior year. And that's actually what got me introduced to West Point. So one of the wrestlers on my team by the name of Jason Sansone, his dad was a West Point grad. Mm. And he knew I had pretty good grades. He approached me. He's like, "Hey, Tyler, have you ever thought about, going to a military academy?" And I was like, "Nah, not really, but, tell me more." And so ultimately he helped me get into the interviews with the congressman and all that. And, it landed on West Point. And, I got in, and I think maybe with a little of his help and other people got my application in. And it was really emotional day in the Patterson household when that letter came in the mail.
Was there anybody in your family that had also served in the Army or went to a service academy?
My dad went to the Merchant Marine Academy. Uh-huh. And that's in Kings Point, so it's not too far from West Point. So, yeah, he absolutely wanted that for me as well. But, full transparency, I really didn't know what it would mean to go to West Point. Like, I didn't know what service meant. Like, joining the Army was, I probably didn't even know that I was joining the Army. Yeah. It was a lot of ignorance.
Did you get recruited to go wrestle there? Like, was that part of it?
I didn't get specifically recruited, but I did walk on to the wrestling team.
So it was mostly about grades and kind of work ethic, teamwork.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pulled you towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, I had amazing friends in high school, not just my wrestling buddies, but really good Christian friends that, like, were awesome role models. And, I think played a huge part in kind of keeping me on the straight and narrow, like studying in high school, getting the grades to be able to get in. And so, and I think that's the other thing other than getting into West Point is, like, it was right before, it was probably 2 weeks before I headed off for our day, right, in Texas. And I asked my dad, I was like, "Hey, I'd like to get baptized." And that's where I really gave my life to Christ, like, fully and, committed to that. So that's kind of another big thing in my formative years is my faith. And so that led to West Point.
Yeah. You have brothers and sisters, older, younger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have 3 siblings. My older brother, he's like 4 years older than me, and then a younger sister and a younger brother. So
what'd they think about you heading off to the service academy?
They thought it was cool. Yeah, they thought it was cool. They probably also didn't know what that meant. They were like, "Oh, West Point, that's cool," and but I think they were just excited for me.
So what was it like once you showed up there and you get there? What was like those first couple of years like at West Point?
It was definitely a little bit of a shock. I was the class of 9/11, so I showed up in 2001. Went and did our day, and then, just a few months later, walk into swim class, see my swim instructor running alongside me, heading to Crandall Pool. He's like, "Did you hear what just happened?" And I was like, "No, sir." And, ultimately they canceled swim class. But yeah, that was the morning of 9/11. So pretty crazy, just only 2 months in, and that happens and completely shakes everything up. But my plebe year was, I guess it was challenging, but it was challenging for everybody.
Yeah.
And I was no different. A lot of stuff happened. So I walked onto the wrestling team. To my surprise, made the team. I'd say I did place in states in high school as a 145 pounder, but I wasn't all that good. And if you're familiar with wrestling, like Texas wrestling is like the minor leagues compared to California and Iowa, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I didn't expect to, but I think, I don't know, maybe I just showed some grit in the tryouts, and Coach Chuck Barbie gave me a shot. And so walked onto the wrestling team, and that was great. I think that formed like a second family for me at West Point, and gave me that much needed outlet
for sure.
after a full day of classes to blow off some steam. And
I see that with Ryan being at West Point right now. As a dad, I can see it where that exactly, gives her that team outside of just the West Point team. Being with the volleyball team has been special. It's made her first 2 years kind of a lot more manageable than what some of the stories that we might have heard. It's hard for you to say, like, was it because of 9/11, what was different that year or the year after, knowing that 9/11 had happened, but you didn't know any different, so it was just, that's the way it was for you. But was there a heightened sense of purpose coming out of 9/11 for those first few years at West Point?
Yeah, absolutely. You could feel the buzz around West Point. And even though I'd only been there a few months before 9/11 and didn't have a lot to compare to, you could just sense, the firsties walking around like this, like stuff just got real, or this just changed a little bit of what my experience in the Army is going to be. So a little bit of a wake up call. Yeah. But I think that's consistent. That was consistent across the Army. Everybody was trying to, like, what's the new normal going to be going forward? But to me, I was just like, hey, I'm going to go to my classes. I'm going to study. I'm going to go to wrestling practice and endure these tough workouts and just try to do my best.
Yeah. Some of the big decisions that people talk about while they're at West Point, like what branch are you going to go? What unit are you going to try to go to? Where are you going to try to get your first post, your first assignment? What was going through your head when it comes to, like, choosing infantry, choosing a place for your first duty station? How did those couple of years go?
Well, I think it'd be necessary to kind of set the table on one thing, which is my friends, right? So the short answer is my friends influenced influenced me branching infantry.
Yeah.
It's like, that was like all my friends, like, were going infantry. Made the choice easy for me. But I think the important thing is, like, who are my friends? I talked about wrestling. I did have some buddies on the wrestling team. A couple of my closer ones actually were a year younger than me that I kept in touch with. But my closest friends I met as I pursued CDQC, so the Combat Diver Qualification Course. And so, again, I was not a swimmer, but sophomore year at West Point, I'm a wrestler. I interact with some friends that are training up for it and go join them in the pool. And let me tell you, it was probably the hardest workout of my life up to that point. I just jumped in. I was like, hey, let's do it. And I remember, I think Ari Martin was part of that group originally. There's a handful of other guys. They were all training up to go try out for CDQC. CDQC selection, which is a grueling 10-hour day, 5 days on the land, 5 days in the water, and just try to survive it. And if you make it to the end, you have a good shot at joining the train up team. And so that was sophomore year. I went out for it. I tried out. I made the team to train up and then went through a few months of that. And so I bring that up because I made some really good friends. I mean, Trevor O'Malley, who that's where we first got to know each other, like holding on to each other in the pool for some warmth.
Was he a year ahead of you?
No, we were classmates.
Yeah. Same year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same year. Ari Martin, I already mentioned. Colin Greta, Ron Garberson was cadre. But, what an awesome example of guys going after something hard. And, the full story there is the first year I did not make it. I went through the whole train up, went to pre-scuba, which they held at West Point that year. And I got cut. I was just not getting the weight belt swim down. Yeah. So I got dropped. I was pretty sad about that because it was a dream of mine. But I bounced back and came through the next year, went through another tryout, ultimately to get back onto the training team, and then went and was successful the second year round. And then, now I'm coming back. I'm a firstie, and I say, hey, I'm so passionate about this, and I stopped wrestling for my first year to help run that program with we had an 18 Delta Master Sergeant that kind of comes down. So I bring that up because I'm trying not to go on a tangent, but all my friends from that circle went infantry, and it was a foregone conclusion. And so, and I think I bought off on, if I go infantry, I'm guaranteed to do more hard things like Ranger School, Airborne School. And so that was an easy choice. And then post night's another really interesting story. Back then it was up in Washington Hall. We put all the cadets that went infantry in there, all the firsties. And then they just put number one, who's ranked number one, all the way down to, I don't know, 100 or something. And, all the smart guys, you got like my buddy Ryan Bakey was number one. He went Italy, and then like Hawaii starts getting pulled. So it finally comes up to me, and I'll tell you, I wasn't on the bottom of the list. I wasn't on the top, but I was so there's one Hawaii slot left, and I go up and I pull the last patch off the wall for Hawaii. But who knew then that every one of the people that drew that electric strawberry, that 25th patch, would become like the best of friends. Pete Walther, right? He's one of the first ones to pull the patch. Obviously, super smart dude. Ryan Clay, Don Kim, Seth Nason, they were all became my closest friends. And to this day, we still hang out. And so anyway, that's the full story leading up to hey, I'm going to Hawaii. I mean, it was a pretty awesome experience. So I always told people I'm the dumbest guy from West Point that went to Hawaii.
Yeah, I've seen all the videos, and I've heard stories from different people on how does branch night go, and how does it go selecting your posts and stuff over the years. But that was, what was the posts that were the ones that went the fastest?
That's almost every year. It was Italy, 173rd.
Regardless of branch, regardless of whether you were infantry, or are you speaking only to infantry?
I'm mainly speaking to infantry is what I know. I'd say it's pretty consistent. A lot of people try to get out there.
Okay.
Italy and then Hawaii would go second. And then after that, it was a little mixed up. Carson, 82nd, 101st.
Okay.
But then it's just a toss-up, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the stories, I remember, I remember the story like it was yesterday, where one of my good friends, Rick Turner, we were lieutenants together, and he was the first captain at West Point. And I remember he always tells the story about, he picked the 25th Infantry Division. It was his first pick. And we were the class of 2003. So everybody was deploying straight into Iraq, straight out of your Bolik and such. And he tells a story about how General Brooks was 25th Infantry Division hasn't deployed since X amount of years. You're going to the 82nd Airborne. And he said, I didn't even get to choose my own location, because then his orders got switched and he went to the 82nd where we linked up. And then off to Iraq we went, as second lieutenants. So I love the stories about how you choose where you're going to be going to and such. So, okay. So now, how did kind of things wrap up at West Point, and how did you, right before you head out to the rest of the Army, the regular Army?
Yeah, I think it went pretty well. Again, I was running the CDQC program, and it was unfortunate because GWAT was in full swing at that point, and we got cut a lot of slots. We were very consistent, getting 15, sometimes 20 slots for cadets every year. And I mean, we would always have a 98% pass rate, because we would take the same things they would test at the school, and we would do twice that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just insane, the train up. But yeah, it was unfortunate. The year I was helping kind of run the program, we got cut significantly, and so that was really tough. We had to send guys to Navy salvage and schools that were not at the same caliber, at least. But yeah, graduated. I think things went really well, and then obviously went down to Ranger School, Benning, and
What was your first couple of years outside of the academy, Ranger School, Airborne School, everything like that? How did those first couple of years go? Did it meet your expectations?
Absolutely. I mean, it was. I think the West Pointers specifically, we have been in a cage, so to speak. So when we get out, there's a lot of I don't know what to do with all this freedom, sort of. So, but yeah, I mean, just a lot of, had a good time. getting out, enjoying that freedom, learning how to like live, cook your own meals, but then just stay in shape, because you knew you had Ranger School coming up. You had to do well in ILBC. But yeah, I thought it was a good experience. Yeah.
And then you make it through that typical pipeline and then out to the 25th. Yeah.
Yep. I did recycle Florida once, which was not exciting, but I thought it was good for me to have a chance to sit there and reflect and then go back through. But so then after graduating Ranger, me and a buddy of mine that also pulled one of the 25th patches off the wall were on the same plane. And at that time I didn't know him that well. Seth Nason is his name. And then today he's my closest friend. In fact, he's retired. He's living on North Shore. He just had his first child. But we were on the same plane. And so, the lieutenant mafia was a real thing back then. So I had a few friends that had already arrived in Hawaii. They're writing us, hey, you want to go to 227. Hey, make sure you write the battalion commander. So both me and my friend had both emailed Colonel Drew Meyerowitz, who was No Fear 6 at the time. Sir, hey, we know you're deploying to Iraq soon. We'd love to be on your team. Then we wrote a typical letter. And he followed through. He made it happen. But it was a really funny story because we're on this plane. We're flying to Hawaii. We get off the plane the first time. I mean, you know what it's like landing in
Paradise.
Daniel K. Oh, yeah, paradise. Just perfect weather. You're like, what is going on here? So we check into the Halikoa. We ultimately decide that we're just gonna be roommates so that we can stay in the Halikoa because we couldn't afford it otherwise for TLA. And then we show up to 25th. We in process, and then it comes down to like, which unit are you going to? And if you think back in time, this is 2006. The 25th was transforming then. One of the light brigades was transforming to strikers. So that was 2nd Brigade. So everybody in 2nd Brigade was receiving these new strikers, figuring out how to use them. We wanted to go to 3rd Brigade, the brigade that was staying light and then, on the patch chart, getting ready to deploy. Yeah. They knew they were going to Iraq in like 2 months. But the problem was they were full up on lieutenants. Yeah. And so they were getting resistance, at the higher level. So the bottom line is we show up. We didn't know where we were. This was the division headquarters though. And they're literally like, all right, gentlemen, like, where do you want to go? And we're like, 3rd Brigade, 227. They're like, okay, you can't both go there. And then they go off into their room and they talk amongst themselves that you guys stay here. They come back. They're like, all right, we came to a consensus. One of you guys can go and you'll need to flip a coin or pick who goes. And they left again. They're like, me and my buddy Seth were like, I'm not giving it up, man. Yeah. And then they came out as we were like, we couldn't come up with an answer. Like, we're just messing with you. You guys both can go to 227. And then we find out later that Colonel Meyerowitz was actively holding on to us, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, the Lieutenant Mafia was a real thing. All our buddies were there.
Yeah, I feel like that has been, a lot of the special units have that same kind of story about you show up. I remember heading to the 82nd, and they were in the NCOs at Ibolik were like, I was like, what's the difference between this unit and that unit? And they're like, they're all the same. Like they're all great units. They're all the place you want to be, but I was going to 1 Panther, and then years later, it's time to go back to one. I want to go back to 1 Panther, and they didn't have all the orders and stuff like that. It wasn't as fluid as it can be like today with all the digital orders and everything. And so I was like, I'm going back to 1 Panther, and someone was like, all right, sounds good to me, and they put my name down for it. So yeah. So how was the first couple of years? Now you're part of that unit.
Yeah.
How did the first couple of years go?
It was great, but it was not easy. So I arrived, we deployed 3 months later. This was 2006, summer of 2006. And if you think to where the war was, this was during the surge. And so we didn't know that at the time, but we got extended towards the end of the deployment, 15 months. 227 was given Houija, which is the Sunni kind of heart of the Sunni Arab world, and lots of insurgency. That's essentially where ISIS is today, or was most active. So very kinetic AO, but that's where 227 was, and I was in Alpha Company. I was platoon leader, and we were in the city. So I just remember showing up to Kuwait. It's like 120 plus. Yeah, it's blazing hot. It's desert everywhere. I'm sure you went there too. You go out, you zero your rifle on the range. You're packed into these little buses. Seeing camels kind of walk by you, sweating like crazy. But yeah, it was. I got a lot of respect and admiration. The leaders in 227 we were acclimatizing. We were out there walking with all our stuff on. It was tough, but yeah, we knew we were about to be in Iraq and with similar conditions. And so showed up to Iraq not too much longer. We ripped with the 101st, and it was a very tough rip, let me tell you. And
what year was this again?
This was 2006.
2006.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll tell a quick story, but this was 101st had been there for a long time. Again, they had a tough fight, and you could tell complacency was setting in there. Great leaders, but they just sunbathing on the roof, stuff like that. Things that I would see that I'm like, I don't think that's right. But I'm brand new. I was like, this is combat. But in Houija, there was BP1 and BP2, so battle position 1 and 2. 1 was on the southern end of the city. It was just a really large building that was never fully finished that we had purchased or occupied or something. Then there was a granary BP2 closer to the middle of the city, which was a high rise, and we had an OP on the top of that. And so I think we're 4 days into our rip, a week-long rip, and a sniper shoots a guy, one of the guys that had his shirt off up on the top of the roof, goes into his shoulder, out his back, and it's not life-threatening, but, so we're at BP1, comes screaming in to evac him. They had some Iraqi security guards at BP2. The guys going up to open the gate for him, the guys just slammed the gate with the truck. The gate hits the soldiers. They didn't know he was there, but hits him in the head. The soldier ends up dying, unfortunately. Iraqi soldiers open the gate. And then they're rushing. They're putting this guy to evac him back to the base who was shot. And so, I mean, just like talk about a wake-up call.
Yeah, that's
right?
your first week.
So, yeah, I'm a brand new PL, relatively new. I'm like in the back seat watching all this go down. I'm like passing a Iraqi with, tons of blood coming out of his head. And I don't know what just happened, but I'm like, holy crap, this is game on. Like I need to get my mind right for this. And so fast forward a few days later, we have the fight, 15-month deployment. It was tough. I remember, we lost nearly 20 Wolfhounds on that rotation. The biggest threat for us was the snipers. They're all around the city and they're really good. The deep buried IEDs, we had a few, not from my company, but other companies, hit some Humvees there, and then improvised rocket launchers were the thing towards the tail end of it. That's what got Starn Gagalak and a few others. But, I just remember how many heroes that we served with, and many, I'm sure, from your units. But I think coming back, being a battalion commander now in 227, it's like that's been one of the most fun things for me is telling their stories of, hey, let me tell you about Staff Sergeant Isaac. He volunteered to be the PSD platoon sergeant. He was an S6 NCOIC. Ranger qualified. He's up in our gym all the time, getting after it, upbeat. He was killed from a sniper's bullet as he was pulling security out of a building as they were clearing it, doing the things that a good platoon sergeant does. Like, we're naming our gym after him, actually. It's like, that's been really cool. And the Specialist Black, Specialist Black jumped in BP1, shot an AT4 centerline through a big van that was carrying 30 drums of HME trying to level the building. Hit it, killed the two guys in it, and thank God the HME didn't blow up. But like heroes like that, those are Wolfhounds. Those are these are people that just were in our battalion, 15 years before you. So as I reflect about, my early years, I was 24 years old, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, like we had to deal with so much loss, anger, fear, but also just that compassion and the brotherhood that you really only hear about in like war novels. And like, so I'm just, as I think back, I'm as hard as those 15 months were, I'm just so thankful for those experiences. And
were you were a second lieutenant and a first lieutenant then? You did not have a family yet?
No.
Yeah, so you were a single lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
Your family was your platoon, and it's your company, and it's those guys that you're out there with.
That's
those
right.
were a hard couple of years. Yeah, like I think to where I was, and I know a lot of listeners are thinking about to where they were, their unit, 06, 08. I was in the 82nd, up in Beijing those years, and like we lost more soldiers across the brigade, that year than I think all the other years combined. From that deployment. Colonel King was down in, Samara, that we were all in 3rd Brigade, 82nd at the same time. So if I was to start going through all the names of the people and that we were serving with that were out there, we feel the same with those names. And I think there's something special about being a part of a unit growing up and then getting to be a part of it later on in your life, because the stories, the history, the names. I just saw a post 2 days ago from Corporal Mason, who was in Alpha Company when I was in Alpha Company, and I later became the company commander of that company, and when he was killed in northern Iraq, so like I feel like we can all go back to our times, like when we were going through at that same time. So how did that deployment wrap up, and then you guys head home?
Yeah, so it went really well. We the battalion did fantastic. We came back. I became an XO right away. Me and my buddy actually, we had a battalion change of command. So Colonel Meyerowicz passed it off to Colonel Raul Gonzalez. Another great leader, and we, me and my buddy were both XOs. Brandon Wolschlegel was his name. We had, like, for a number of years, like, we had talked about, like, hey, man, how cool would it be to go do Best Ranger competition? And, like, I was a super big nerd about it. I would watch the History Channel videos because they made them back then for all the different years. I had, like, every one of years, the 2003, 2004, 2005 BRC, and all these people I would later bump into in my career. I'm like, hey, I know you from BRC 2004, and he's like a Fulbright colonel or something. He's like, I was like, yeah, you fell off the high dive and you're bleeding from your chin, or like the obstacle course. It was just funny because I had studied these videos so much, because if you think back in time, 2008, right? We went to BRC 2008. Prior to that, they had Team Hawaii, similar to what Lightning Academy is doing now. They train up the BRC candidates. Well, Team Hawaii was very much a thing. It was the same sort of concept. But you had some like legends, right, that walked through there. So Dave Utlau, for example, was Pete Walters' company commander. He did BRC, got second place, I think, the year.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, Colonel Gonzalez said, yep, I'll let you and Brandon go do BRC. We're about to go to EIB. You guys go focus on that for the next month and a half or whatever. So I'm so thankful for people like him that let us do hard things. It goes back to what General Gerard said on your podcast, which is, why would you prevent someone from doing something hard? I'm like, thank God that didn't happen to me. But they let me do it. And I remember on a Saturday night, we're here on post and everybody else going out downtown, and me and Brandon are doing a 24-mile rough march through the neighborhoods up Coley Pass. Like, it's 2 a.m. We're practicing giving each other IVs on the hills of the Kahuku, or over here on Coley. And it was awesome. I was super motivated and super proud. We did finish. We did okay. We didn't have a coach till the very, very end. But
were you training with the other teams from the 25th, or was it kind of you're on your own? Each team was on their own.
So that's the funny thing. There was no other team. Okay. Everybody was either deployed or doing something else. It was me and Brandon. Like, we were the only ones from 25th that year. And it was just different back then. There was no train up, nothing organized. It was what we put together. And then we did get a coach like about a week before we went down there that had just come from Arslick and knew the roads.
Yeah.
He's a command sergeant major now, Weaver. It was fantastic, but we did okay. I mean, as good as you could expect. We took 12th place, but it was really cool coming back because Bronco 6 was Colonel Walter Pyatt.
Yeah.
And he pins an ARCOM on our chest. And yeah, just really cool memories. But yeah, I'm just so thankful for Colonel G, right? Colonel Gonzalez and Colonel Pyatt and everybody just letting us do something hard like that. And, we had to do EIB later in our career, but it worked out. And I think that leads to one other interesting story, which is then I made the decision, like, hey, I'm in the best shape of my life. I want to go SFAS. So I go to SFAS and, I do all right. I finished the course, but I did not get selected. And I think this is 2007 now, if I'm not mistaken. No, wait, it's 2008. So it's after BRC. Yeah, I was a roadkill, came back, and I was super bummed about that because it was something I felt like that was the next thing for me.
Yeah. What's roadkill mean?
During LANAV, if you get caught too close to a road or on a road, like they'll take your number down, and then they didn't tell you until the very end. But
got it.
The big thing was, I didn't feel so strongly like convicted to go back. I was like, you know what, this is part of God's plan. I'm just going to I'm going to stay the infantry route. But I'm glad I had that experience because not only did I need to be humbled, and I think you always need to be humbled like throughout your career, but it gave me such a great opportunity to talk to my lieutenants now because I have a lot that are going. And then just really come alongside them if they don't pass, they don't get picked up.
Yeah.
One really interesting story, I won't say his name, but he came back, didn't get picked up. It's like roadkill, same exact story.
Yeah.
But I could see the fire in his eyes. He wanted to go back so bad. I was like, you want to go back? It's like, let's do it. Let's go back. So I went back probably 3 months later, he passed.
Yeah.
And then he came back here and he had a couple months before he PCS'd and like he helped other lieutenants across the 25th prepare. And, it's awesome. He's going to be a Green Beret. He's going to be a fantastic Army officer for, in the future.
I think that's something that we don't appreciate until we get older is your failures and how to kind of mentally prepare the younger soldiers, younger officers, younger NCOs, right, for tough things that they're going to do in their career. You don't think about it or appreciate it till I think later on in life, and you get to see it. And it's that, how do you talk to, these young officers or an NCO that says they want to go to SFAS? Or in my case, I get a lot of folks that say, I want to go to the Ranger Regiment and I want to go be a part of it. And one of the things I got to talk to them about is how to don't be so disappointed if it doesn't happen. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like you always say things like there is no plan B, but there can be, like God's got a plan for all of us. Yeah. And you might think this is your thing and life will come to an end if I don't make it, if I don't get picked, if I'm not selected, or if I don't run fast enough. I do believe that God has a plan for us and that there are good things that can come from that. You got to go through your own challenges and your own path. And I think that one of the most common things from people that are still around today, whether they're battalion commanders or sergeant majors, the one thing I think we all have in common is failures. Mm-hmm. At this point, we've all got so many failures. Nobody gets to this point and is like, no, I haven't failed at anything. Everything's gone exactly the way I hoped it would have gone. There's nobody that has that kind of a path because there's so many different ways our paths can go when you're talking to those kids.
Yeah. And some of the most growth is going to come from those. And a lot of people just bottle it up, just push it down. Don't let anybody know. It's like, dude, there's so much more you can do to benefit others by talking about that and kind of how you cope with that.
And I think they keep it to themselves because they don't think you've ever had a failure. Yeah. There'll be a lot of people that are going to say something like I didn't know you went to SFAS and didn't make it. Because where would that have come up in a conversation with all your junior officers and NCOs? This might be the first time that they hear about it. I've heard a lot about people that I've had on as guests, and the things that they talk about in these conversations, a lot of other people are like, I had no idea
Yeah.
that he or she did those things or went through those failures. I'm going to look at them differently now. And so I think this conversation will be not only helpful for you, but anybody that ever serves with you can like look back and listen back to some of these things and say, I didn't know that he went through those challenges. I didn't know that he had that, you know? So we talked about SFAS and failures. Was there anything else kind of in this, you know, chapter of your life, this kind of the area of your life where you feel like you learned something that you're now kind of applying in your life now as a little bit more senior of a leader?
Yeah, I think it's just mostly that, which is, you know, do hard things, like especially things you're really driven to do, but just be content if that doesn't pan out. I mean, again, like, I think, you know, God is in control of all things, right? Like, and there's some things that are, there's lots of things well outside of our control. So just, you know, if it doesn't work out, you know, think about it and pray about it and either move on a different path that you maybe don't see clearly, but God does. And I encourage folks with that as well.
Yeah, one of those that people talked about a lot was deployments. Was they always wanted to go to a unit that was deploying.
Yeah.
And whether it didn't matter what location, it didn't matter what unit. I want to go to a unit that's deploying. And sometimes you don't need to chase those things. You need to take your path. Because if we're all in the Army for more than 3 or 4 years, we're all going to get an opportunity to do something like that. You know. How does this transition into kind of like your next kind of group of your field grade years? Like what are the biggest things that kind of came out of your field grade years?
Well, yeah. So when I left the 25th, which again, you know, I have an affinity for this unit and dates way back. But I went to MCCC, got stationed out at JBLM, and commanded a striker company, and then an HHT after that. And then towards the tail end of that, I applied and got selected to go back to teach at West Point in DPE. And so before that, I went to UVA to get a master's. Met my wife there, Michelle, and then after getting my master's, went up to West Point for 3 years, and then went to ILE. So I just kind of hit fast forward through those years. But you know, it was
if you could though, tell me about, like, because there's a lot of people that. They think that their career has to follow this exact path. This is how it goes. If you're going to be a battalion commander, this is the way it goes, and company command, and then following that, right? I won't belabor the point. Yeah. You know, you went and did what you wanted to do. Like, you went and then you went back and taught at West Point. And for those people that hear that it's a career killer, or you can't do these things, or that's going to put you on a path that's going to be impossible, you know, to get back on. What's your advice to the people that there's things that they want to do in the Army that don't fit the exact perfect path of what maybe their branch is telling them to do?
I would tell them, you know, it's a math problem. It's an equation that you have to calculate multiple times throughout your career. And so I think it's good to listen to advice from mentors, especially trusted mentors that want the best for you. But you can't put a price tag on, like, what are you, like, on fire, like, passionate about doing? You can't put a price tag. And, like, I believe, like, that, you know, God gave you, Colonel LeClaire, like, you have special talents and gifts. And I feel like I'm the same. Like, if you can put those to work in your job, like, the Army and you is going to benefit way, way more than you could be doing some job that somebody said, hey, you should go do this. That's kind of what, you know, led to me choosing to go to West Point. Some people were like, hey, that's a career killer, man. Like, don't do that. You're going to be gone out of the force for so long. I'm like, dude, I love this stuff. And to go to school for kinesiology. And I hadn't, like, I knew I wanted to have a family someday, but you know what our first few years in the Army was like. I mean, I can't fathom, like, what it would have been like to be married 15 months, 12 months, back to back to back. It would have been extremely hard, and I have tons of respect for those families that did endure that. But I wanted to start a family, and so, like, what better spot than, you know, grad school? And that's exactly what happened. I met my wife, Michelle, on my first house hunting visit, scouting out a place to live in Charlottesville and trying to find a church. And like, I found both of those. And then I also found a wife. It's like the most successful trip like in history. But yeah, I went after that. I was in my first year at West Point after finishing grad school, and then we got married my second year, and then I had my oldest son Uriah my third year there. So I say all that because I would just say be careful, right? Like just listening to the path that's going to lead to success from someone else's perspective, it may deprive you of a family. It may deprive you of an experience because, coming out of company command, 2 company commands, 2 Afghanistan deployments, which I just kind of skipped through real quick. Like I kind of needed to take a short knee, and I think that's okay too. Because I needed to recharge because I wanted to come back as a field grade that's just not there in body, but like in spirit. I needed to be on fire to do good work.
Yeah, I think that's what you just said is much easier said than done. Like to own up to the fact that I need to take a little bit of a break, because you feel like as soon as you say that, people are going to be like push you off to the side, and this person can't hack it. They don't have what it takes in order to kind of to be that leader. But we've all been around the good leaders and the bad leaders, and the ones that did whatever they say, I'm going to do whatever I'm told, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to keep serving, and this job is more important than my family, and this is what it takes in order to get promoted. We've all seen that, right? And you can see it coming from a mile away, and they're not happy. So they are successful. They do get the jobs that they want. They do get promoted, maybe sometimes faster than everybody, but they're just not happy.
Right.
And it's hard to be around those kind of people all the time when they're happy, versus the flip side. Maybe somebody didn't get promoted as fast. Maybe somebody didn't get all the exact assignments that they want, but they made the best out of the assignments that they did. Those people were fun to be around, and it was great to have them as a leader. And you know that they cared about you, and so you want to kind of replicate that leadership. I know I do want to replicate that kind of leadership that I see out there. Yeah. Okay. So now this is when you start your family, your field grade years. You start to build these all things. What's the big so what coming from your field grade years?
Yeah. So I got married, like I mentioned. I had my first child Uriah when I was in my third year at West Point, and then I get to ILE, and then I have my second son Wade, who's 7 now. So yeah, we're growing our family at this point. I get 101st for my unit and go to Bastogne, 1st Brigade. Get to work for Colonel Derek Thompson, who's the brigade commander, and then Colonel King, who was the squadron commander. I become his S3, which is pretty cool. Kind of going full circle back here in 25th. But we knew we were going to JRTC. I think I had 2 months after ILE to head out to JRTC, which was awesome because I really took ILE seriously. It was a Cav squadron in the 101st, 132 Cav, and so I didn't know a ton, even though I was an HHT commander previously. I didn't know a ton about Cav. I hadn't been to Cav Leaders course and done all that. So I went out of my way to take extra courses at ILE from like Stetson wearing super proud cavalrymen.
Cav life.
And just pick their brain about, hey, talk to me about RDSP. Talk to me about commanders reconnaissance guidance,
3-98.
Yeah. Because I knew I wouldn't be able to go to Cav Leaders course before, but it was hugely beneficial to know where I was going early and be able to shape that at ILE. So get there, do JRTC. It was great experience. Got to really get to know Colonel King, was a phenomenal commander to work for. And then we deployed to Iraq not too long after that. And we were mostly in Iraq doing an advise and assist mission. So our squadron got selected to go advise and assist the Baghdad Operations Center. And what an awesome experience. We had a little talk. It was next to Adnan's Palace. You familiar with the cross rifles in Baghdad? Yeah. So we worked out at Adnan's Palace. We had a talk there. So I was kind of helping run that. And I had advised and assisted the G3 and the G5, which is kind of funny when you think about it. These are Iraqi 2-star generals. One of them, the G3, walked with a limp because, he fought in the Iran-Iraq war, 20 years before that, shot in the leg, true hardened, infantry officer. The G5 was a War College graduate, U.S. War College graduate,
Wow.
Fluent in English, and just one of the most professional officers I'd ever met. Phenomenal. It was less of an advise and assist and more like a mentorship role for the whole 9 months we were over there. But I really loved that deployment. It was less kinetic. We operated in the green zone. It was pretty permissive. That's when I first, the only real kinetic was you get rockets or indirect fire.
Yeah.
That's when I got to understand what SMGs were, and I long stories in the office with these two stars that fought the Iran-Iraq war, explained what was going on. I was like, wow, I had no idea about all that.
That's awesome.
So phenomenal deployment. I grew immensely at the tail end of that as I'm getting ready to leave. Colonel Thompson, who was a lot of fun to work for, he pulled me in. He's like, hey, what do you want to do next? Have you thought? He's like, you're pretty good with the relationships. He's like, you should apply to some jobs. And he gave me some points of contact, and come to find out, I applied to JIDF NCR, and I had two buddies that were working there already. So Pete Walther was there, Eli Myers was there, both classmates of mine. And so fast forward interview process, I go out to DC, I go through a week-long selection, and I remember coming back to Fort Campbell, and at that point it was Colonel McAllister, because Colonel King and McAllister had changed out. I'm like, yeah, that was cool. It was a good experience. I got to talk with the psych and all this. But I was like, I'm not getting picked up for that. There's all these Green Berets running around and, just really talented dudes. But I'm glad, thanks for letting me go. And I get a call the next day. They're like, hey, you're the only one we hired for this position. We're going to gap the other two. I was a little bit shocked by it, but flattered. And I said, yeah, that's awesome. So did it. This was 2020, early 2020 when I got that call, and then I PCS to DC to work for Colonel Obadal at the time at JIDF NCR. And so, yeah, just, so thankful, right?
Can you?
All that.
Now, I know what it is because I also wanted to go and do that. That was one of the things I was hoping to do during those years. But can you talk for some of the people that might not know what JIDF NCR does, and what do you guys do out there?
Sure. So it stands for the Joint Interagency Task Force, National Capital Region. And really, without butchering it, right, their job is to represent, JSOC up there to the interagency and the intelligence community. And so going around, doing the engagements with seniors and, all the interagency intel community partners, you represent them because they're down at Fort Bragg, right?
Yeah.
And they can't be up there 24/7. So they know the importance of maintaining those relationships and staying abreast of what their initiatives, what are they driving towards? And then, you have the education, you have the experience, and then you have the relationship skills to pull it all together, for the JSOC commander and helping him, shape things that he's trying to achieve. So, yeah, I think that's the short version.
Yeah, it's a professionalized fusion cell of bringing everything together in one location, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's normal for us in that organization. Again, after you get some good onboarding, which they do a fantastic job. Because someone like me, I was like, I've never been in SOF. Yeah. What is this? What is all this? This is a different language. Teach me. They did a fantastic job of that in your first year and give you the right experiences to do that. But it's normal for a new action officer there you're going around, you're going Department of Treasury, you're going to Department of State, you're going to FBI, you're going to go meet with you're going to do these engagements. And they teach you the roads on what are some things you don't do, right? Some things you do, etiquette, everything from talking to a 3 or 4 star equivalent, SES, to just an action officer, an agent, whatever. So that's normal. And I'll tell you, I'll speak a little bit to the leaders there in a moment, but I've never experienced the investment in people is what I experienced there. Talking to, General Rose took over after Obadal left, and he took that by the horns, and just because he was a major there too back in the day, very different back then, but he knew about how you needed to invest in your officers their first and second years. I mean, he set up these national security policy seminars that you have 30-year veterans of, the interagency or intel community educating you for a week long. And I've never received that sort of training and intentionality investment. And that was huge for me. So I'm super thankful for everybody that did that, and just the people there.
I think it's worth, reiterating how they invested in you while you were a part of this special organization, right? And how people like you and Rose and everybody that's been a part of these kind of organizations, right? One of the things they have in common is they know how important it is to onboard people, to take some time to train them on the standards and the values and the process that our organization might have, right? And they bring it to it. This idea that if you just bring people on and they'll know what to do is false. Or like, if we bring on the right people, they'll figure it out. OJT. That's false. Mm-hmm. It's not true. And then what you end up doing is creating an environment where now for a while, the people that have been there for a year or two, they don't even know what they were supposed to be doing. Now the new people are just following in behind, right? The one thing one of these things that all these organizations have in common is how they onboard, how they invest in people. I was brought up to, when I was part of the Ranger Regiment, they brought us all up there to the NCR and walked us around to every one of these agencies and spent hours bringing us, this is how you can help us. This is how we can help each other. This is what's important about my job. Tell me what's important about your job. The Khyber Conference, right before you went into theater, you'd go up there and you'd learn from all these agencies, right? And you'd go in more prepared because you knew what each other we're having to do. They invested in us, right? And now you take that same thing and apply it to your organization, whatever type of organization that might be. Invest in the new people, onboard them, educate them, teach them what our values and our standards are, right? I think that's worth reiterating that you went through, and I know you're doing now with your organization now.
Yeah, I think it's, defining what you want. What you want these officers, in this case, to look like when they leave the organization. Like, what are the skills you want them to have? And I thought General Rose did a fantastic job of that, of defining that and helping create that, right, in the first few years. And then applying it here in the 25th for me, warfighting readiness is like, that's what we're building. I don't want my lieutenants to be fluent interagency speak. I want them to be gritty, tough as nails, like dudes that could go into the hardest day of combat against our most consequential adversaries and then come out successful. And so, like, I think it looks different. And so onboarding, I think it's, it looks different depending on where you're at. But like, that's, hey, their first day in the unit, they got to go do PT with me. And it's not going to be an easy one. But it's also like, we get a lot of time to talk in that, and I get to know the people and explain kind of my leader philosophy and hey, like, we have a good candid conversation, get to know them. But that's going towards warfighting readiness and physical fitness, and there's a lot more to unpack. But yeah, I think you absolutely need to be intentional with the onboarding. Yeah,
you started to dabble into like the Wolfhounds and where you're at right now and as a battalion commander. But before you became a battalion commander, right, it wasn't all the easy road, right? It wasn't all roses and stuff like that. Like, here, welcome to the Wolfhounds. Yeah. Everything's going to be perfect, right? How were those couple years, BCAP and such like that, in preparation for battalion command? How did those couple years go?
Yeah, so I think it's I'm big on transparency here. So, like, again, I've failed probably more ways than I've been successful. I deployed forward in my job at JIDF NCR as the J3 out forward in Jordan. And it was probably my second week as the J3 I get a call from General Rose, and he's like, "Hey, Ty, I hate to tell you this, but you didn't get battalion command. I just gone to BCAP a little bit before that." He's like, "Hey, I'm sorry." But he followed immediately up with some encouragement of, "Hey, I really hope that you go back, and I hope you do it again." Just he said that, he saw some potential in me, right? And then I got to work at that time. The forward commander was Gabe Zodi, Colonel Zodi. He went on to command 5th Group, and oh man, what a fantastic leader he was as well. And he pulled me in again. He's like, "Hey," like he told me about his story about, alternate first go around, and he encouraged me as well. I didn't miss a beat, right? Like, I feel like had they not taken the time to like lighten the blow, right? Like, these are like, some people like, "Those are my dreams dashed," right? Like, I would have spent weeks probably kind of sulking about that. But I was so passionate about the mission over there, and hey, I'm the J3. I'm like in a really important role to like move and shake things for my boss, to like keep things on the rails and like drive new initiatives. I felt like the next day I came back and it was like nothing happened. I was like, take it on the chin. I was like, I can respond one of two ways. One, I could be like negative Nancy and just like, woe is me. Or two, I can say, "Hey, I probably have some holes in my swing I can fix. Let's use the next year to do that."
Yeah.
And so I chose the latter, right? And there were absolutely holes in my swing, right? Like times where I put the product over the producer, like where I was too hard on my people because I'm driving towards an objective. I absolutely had issues there. And so that, I think I took the advice of my mentors and really made the 3-4 months that I had over as the J3 to like count. And so, yeah, I'm just so thankful for that. And so yeah, just, those leaders. And I think that was incumbent on me to do the same thing for my subordinates. If they have a setback like that, because it's normal, it's life. And, went back the second year, was successful. And
before you go into that, like everybody's had a little bit different BCAP, CCAP. Some people didn't go to either. Some people went to both. Now they're both off right now, right? What do you suspect or do you know? Like what came from BCAP? Was it 100% clear to you why you didn't get picked the first year? Was it vague? How did that all go, please?
Not clear to me coming out. My psych eval, right? I remember the psychiatrist, "Hey, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great." And she's looking at everything, right? That any sort of DROG that could have come through in the 360s or whatever. So I was definitely a little blindsided by it. But, ultimately the board, I think, makes the decision. And my guess is that maybe I had some arrogance maybe in some of my answers in the board. It's okay.
Yeah. Like but it's a guess, but you don't know for sure.
Yeah. And I think coming out of that BCAP, they did get a lot of feedback from the officers who went through of like, you need more transparency here. Like, we're taking all these tests for you. Like, tell us how we did, right?
Yeah.
And then, having to be able to go through again, the next year, they did make those improvements. So I credit the program. They did say, "Hey, like, you actually scored really well on the writing exam," which I thought was going to be one of my worst ones. And then you leave not really knowing what the board result was, but I've heard that they've gotten better at, informing candidates sooner.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I went the second year and came out as a principal, and then, with everyone else just waiting, like, "Hey, what did we get?" I had number 1 on my list, 227 infantry. And I'll never forget it. I'm Skyping a buddy of mine that, is like on the inside and like would get the information before me. And it was like the day before we got the official notification. He texted me a picture of a palm tree with a sunset behind it. And I was like, serious. I was like, I'm going to Hawaii. And so, but again, it goes back to the first stories. Like, man, God has got a plan. Like I think he had this plan, like when I left this battalion as lieutenant, and it just took me all those years to wake up to it. And just super
because it wouldn't have
thankful.
been open the year before.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't open the year before if
Exactly.
you had gotten picked the year
Correct.
before. Yeah. It's a great story, and it's a great, we could talk for hours about just how our failures kind of shaped, the leader that we become, because most people won't know that about you. They will just know who you are today. What have you done for me lately? What are you
Right.
doing tomorrow? But the leader that you've become because of all that is what's most important. So now you're out here in Hawaii. How did that first year kind of coming in here, going into the Wolfhound Battalion, what's the so what for that transition?
Yeah, so I was supposed to take command in June of 24, and I took command 2 months earlier. Pete was going to 275, and he was changing command around the same time, so it made sense. Came in, and it was the week after I took command, we were deploying to the Philippines. So the whole battalion was deploying. I joined them, and the main mission was JPMRC X, which was the very first one of its kind. But we also were doing everything Philippines, right? We did the MCTIZO, which was the joint operation with the Marines in the Luzon Strait. We did platoon live fires out there at Fort Magsaysay. I had a company go down to Camp Texon and do the Philippine 1st Scout Ranger Regiment Jungle School. And so we were just kind of cast to the winds and stuff. And so, but, as I reflect back on the entire Philippines experience, I'll be honest, it was very tough, very challenging. I was coming out of that job at JIDF, and it was so strategic. Like, I had lost the Army green, right, that I'd had. Like, the tactical, I was still fit. I could hang with the guys and run, but I couldn't remember the last time I'd done a car. I'd done MDMP and stuff like that. And so it was a wake up call to hey, quickly, you need to learn fast. And so I definitely felt the pressure. I let that get the best of me, as there are days where I felt like I wasn't having fun. And again, that's on me, because I think as I reflect, I was carrying the perceived risk of the unit on my shoulders. Like, I was worried, with 120 degrees, we're doing this stuff, and it's tough. And I credit General Evans, who's CG at the time. Like, he's like, you need to take action when you see risks and mitigate them at your level, right? And so yeah, just super thankful for my team. So Command Sergeant Major Mirador accelerated his timeline to come join me.
Did he come to the Philippines with you too?
He came out for JPMRCX. So yeah, I had lost all my sergeant majors right before that for, people fleeting up and other reasons. And so he knew he was coming from, I think it was Rattlesnakes, over. And so he did a solid to come join me. So I had a senior NCO there to bounce ideas off of. Dude, this looks risky.
So your team that you went to the Philippines with, right before that, with Rob Shaw, the whole brigade had just gone through JPMRC and did a preparation rotation, right? Mm-hmm. But that whole team changed over after Rob Shaw left. Mm-hmm. Colonel King comes in. You switched out with Pete, and Mirador comes in. So you have a whole new team going into the Philippines,
right?
Instead of the whole point is you do the train up, right? Mm-hmm. As part of JPMRC, and then you go into the Philippines, then you go into the rotations. But you had a whole new team going into the Philippines.
Yeah, for the most part, I had some stability. So I had awesome field grades. I had Andy Ferrara for a couple months as XO, who I'm sure Andy's extreme, super high caliber. And then Mike Watson he'd finished his time as S3 and took over Andy as the XO. And then Rick Blank had come on board right around that same time. So yeah, I mean, they were phenomenal. They kept the wheels on and helped entertain all my questions and ideas. But yeah, it was definitely tough. And so, coming back, we executed JPMRCX. We returned back to Hawaii in I think it was June or July. And then we wrote about it. Rick Blank and I, we basically wrote that article called Relearning the Timeless Lessons of combat in Asia, and it speaks to the history of the 25th. It speaks to what World War II in the Pacific was like, and how a lot of what we learned out there wasn't learned for the first time. It's like DNBI, so disease non-battle injury. Like, that was the majority of the casualties we took. You know, people that just got sick or like had GI issues or whatever. Like, there were large numbers of those. Like, when you're in that extreme heat and then the monsoon season. So yeah, so we wrote about that and then published that in the West Point's Modern Warfare Institute, and it got a lot of readership, and CSA even, like, you know, cited it as something to read. So I was really happy to see that the candid article there about, hey, we messed this up, boom, 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 boom. You know, here's what we will do next time, boom, boom, boom. They appreciated that, and I thought it made us and everyone in the division a little better too. And so, you know, just to hit fast forward, to come back from JPMRCX from the Philippines, you know, we have Holy Family Home. We host the orphans here for 2 weeks, one with us, one with 127. Host families take in the children. We're the OP4 for Nakoa Fleet, which is, again, the Bronco Blitz equivalent that 2nd Brigade did. And then we were like one of the main OP4 battalions for when I first met you, sir, which was when you came in as the COG. And we were OP4 for 2nd Brigade. Yeah. Mainly at KTA, but also on South Range that year. But yeah, I was super thankful just to be able to work with you, and how much freedom and latitude you gave me to fight my battalion the way that I wanted to. And the little nudge of, hey, commander's dialogue might be a good idea. And we did that. And, you know, our result, I think, was way better because of that. And so, but that's when I think I first met you and we started talking. So awesome experience there. And I think that's also coming out of JPMRC OP4. You know, we talk about vision statements and stuff for battalion commanders a lot at pre-command course and all that. It wasn't until I came out of that JPMRC OP4 rotation in October of 2024 that I felt like I could first see the vision for our battalion. It's like the clouds lifted. It's like, okay, all right, I've seen what I need to see, and now it's my turn. Like, now we're gonna turn this battalion into I laid out the vision. People win, transform. And some of the listeners on here are gonna laugh because I totally stole that from someone else.
Same. Sounds very familiar.
But made it our own. It's like, hey, it needs to be simple because I want everybody to understand it. I was like, people, that is our foundation. Like, we're going to invest in our people. We're going to give them really hard training so that they can survive combat, but we're also going to take care of them in the lowest of lows. Like, they suffer something really terrible, but also in the highest of highs. We're going to come alongside them, celebrate their successes. That's people win. So I was like, we're going to win the things that we intend to win. Like, to try to win everything is foolish. I was like, we're going to set our crosshairs on things that we intend to win. And the culture in our battalion, dating way back to well before I was even a lieutenant there, we are a competitive bunch, and winning is in the DNA of this battalion. And so I said, we're going to win the things that we set out to win. You know, one of which is, you know, Tropic Lightning Week, is we always set our crosshairs and we operationalize that months in advance. And then the third one is transform. And this is, I see up on your shelf here, the Good to Great, the book. In there, it talks about what are the things you can be the best in the world at. You know, do those things. And so when I really had time to reflect on this battalion, to reflect on myself, like my team, my sergeant major, I was like, what are the things that we can be the best in the world at? And I came up with 3. I said, hey, H2F. I was like, I'm a super big H2F nerd. Like, I'm going to give this battalion the best resources, the best facilities, the best everything. You know, I'm going to recruit the best coaches we can for them and build, you know, if they want something special in our gym, I'm going to try to purchase it for them to get it, you know. So H2F was one of them. We did a big study on that, which I can talk about later. The second one was lethal small UAS. We, like everyone else, have been watching the Russia-Ukrainian conflict for some time now. And we had this vision a long time ago. Like, we want to lead not just this division, but we want to lead the Army on the tactical employment of lethal small UAS. And so, like, in April, we were, at the platoon live fire I did in April, like, I incentivized platoons, like, if you could drop from your drone a blue body grenade and make it land within a kill radius of these targets in the trench, you're getting extra points. And, it was a grading scale. We basically built a TNEO and, like, gave it the criteria as mostly lethality points. Did you kill the target or not? But it was amazing what we saw. We saw, like, a battalion that was motivated by that vision, and 3/4 of the battalion successfully got a drone up to drop. They didn't all hit inside the kill radius of the target to get max points, but it reminds me of when you have the people, like the innovative people, the hungry people, like just give them the task, like tell them the vision, like go and just remove obstacles for them. And so that was the second one, lethal small US, and the third one is the TAC. So that's my fighting platform. I inherited from, I think Pete might have built it, maybe his predecessor, with the Crawfish, which is the M-Razor with the comm suite built into the back of it. We still use that, but we got the ISVUs, which are like, the ISVs with the bed in there. We love the ISVU. And so, but we have always come out of these training exercises saying, okay, like, what's TAC 3.0 look like? What's TAC 4.0 look like? How do we buy down this audible signature that you can hear that a scout could pick up 200 meters away? We're constantly, like, innovating that, and we have a vision for TAC 3.0 we're building right now. But I digress. It's like transform. It was 3 things, and I said that's it, because I think we can be the best at these 3. And I made clear to the team, like, and I put people in charge of innovating on those, and it's been really cool to see. The FPV live fire in October. It was just because I have some great leaders that are super aggressive, and, like, they found the right people, the unicorns, as I like to call them, that were like the partners to build and pull that off. But it was the division really that made it happen.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk for hours, about this, because the last 15 to 20 minutes has really been, like, a lot for us. Like, we talked about JPMRC, we talked about the vision. Like, I'm so glad we got into that area, because for a lot of listeners at this point, they're like the true believers that are still listening to the two of us talking right now. But, like, that vision for an organization, what you can be the best in the world, that resonates with me so much, on what you guys are doing, at the battalion level. What has been, like, the most impactful thing? You kind of come out of those things. You talked about writing, you talked about going to JP, you talked about what you learned, then you were the OPFOR, but then we kind of go into as the rotational unit, right? For JPMRC. What has been the most impactful thing that you guys have been able to kind of, whether it's accomplish or that culture that you've got that made you as successful as you guys were as the rotational unit recently?
I think I talked about people already. It's like, that's our foundation. So this past summer, so it was early July, we had kind of a changing of the guard. So we had a couple new company commanders come in. We had a new S6, a new AS3, 2 new AS3s. We had, like, this whole new crop of folks coming in that were not there for our platoon live fires. We're not there for a lot of the events. And it was like we had one shot, right, at like some event that was going to bring them quickly into the fold as a member of the No Fear Battalion. And when I was a lieutenant here twice, we went to Kauai and we hiked the Nepali coast. And it's like 12 miles. It's very, very up, like lots of terrain. But it's a world-class hike. I mean, people fly from all over the world to do it. It's called the Kalalau Trail. And you have to buy a permit through the state, and in peak seasons, it's hard to get. So I had this grand idea that I brought to my team, like, last year, said, hey, how cool would that be if our whole battalion could do that? Like not our whole battalion, but all our leaders in the battalion. I said, I'm thinking our company command teams, our top 5, and then, maybe a few other captains or sucks that are going to take company command. I was like, we got one shot. They're going to come in. And we have some amazing people in that battalion. And like, there was a lieutenant, I gave it to a company. I said, hey, you plan this, as Bravo company or Jungle company. And they had a lieutenant that was like perfect for the job. So long story short, like for me, back when I was a lieutenant, getting 2 permits was a challenge. We got 30 permits. It was during a weekday. We got through the lottery system, something like half of those. And then we had to fly out and be in person in Kauai, which was the secret, right? To be able to get the remaining 15. We pulled it off. I could not believe that we were able to do it, but we did. And I'll tell you what that was like. We all got on a flight to Kauai that left at, I think, 6 a.m., maybe 5:30, super early in the morning. We arrived Kauai. Our Advon party had already picked up the rentals, drove us to the trailhead, took like a couple overnight bags because we would stay one night in a hotel at the tail end of this. Dropped us off at the trailhead. We had permits in hand, everything. We start walking 12 miles. I'm 40-something years old now, right? I did this as a 20-something, and most people stop halfway through on that hike and stay overnight because it's pretty tough physically. But I said, nah, it's like, you guys are doing the whole thing. I was like, get ready. Like, bring your water filtration systems because we'll pass a couple water sources, refill. And we did it. And almost everybody, a couple guys didn't make it, but they turned back in time. But 90% of our guys made it.
What was the audience for this? What was the group?
It was company command teams and above. So company command teams, top 5. And then I had a couple of my captains that were going to take command. So I mentioned this because that was a gritty event. I mean, we were averaging 45 pounds in a pack. It was the equivalent of doing Cocoa Head with that pack. I think it was 22 times.
Oh, so my goodness.
Imagine going up and down. That was the elevation gain, if I'm not mistaken. It was physically tough. It was very tough. Not to mention there's some sketchy spots on that trail that you just got to be careful. But we made it. And like the guys brought their hammocks. We set up, we had some meals at the end. Next morning, we had this PT thing. Everybody was like, dude, my knees, like we did yoga, on the beach instead. Somebody took us through. And then we swam to Honopu, which was, I did a little risk assessment on that one because I did that too. Honopu is a beach past Kala'au. You got to swim about 200 meters to. It's not very far, but you have to be a decent swimmer. Again, majority of our guys swam over there, and that's paradise. That's like you want to go propose to your fiance over there sort of spot. So as I reflect on that and like what made us super tight as a team, like that event was awesome. And I had I'll just take my S6. My S6 had just shown up from the Marine career course. I talked to him on the phone and I told him, hey, you're going to be back in time for this. He joins us, but like we're finishing this hike and we go back to the hotel. We just stayed one night in the hotel and he's like laughing and joking with these guys that are going to be company commanders in a few months. And like when I look at JPMRC, which we just executed, like I saw such a cohesive team and I thought like hey, maybe that bought us like 6 months of run-ins in the office because these dudes built a fire together. They shared moleskin, at the end of that hike and walk back. But yeah, again, just super thankful my team was able to pull that off. And then, what we saw, I think were the fruits of the labor of putting in the time and doing the hard work and like showing the grit to get through those tough physical events to then enjoy and earn the one night in a hotel, right? So,
yeah. That's awesome that you guys got to put that all together and kind of see the results of it. Now, what are like the so what of the results, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that you had such a cohesive team kind of going into this rotation at JPMRC and these rotations are not easy, right? A CTC rotation is challenging in so many different ways. Every one of them is slightly different. what was it about this one that made you guys so successful? Where were the areas maybe you struggled, and where were the areas that you were super proud of them?
Well, I talked about people. I think that's the number one, right? Like what made us successful. Number two, though, was our training. We did JPMRC as OP4 last year. We did JPMRCX before that. We did NACOA Fleek. We basically lived out in some of these training areas like Buston Gulches for a long time. And I give a ton of credit to the brigade leadership, Colonel King, Command Sergeant Major Olivas, on how they designed Bronco Blitz, which was essentially our brigade FTX. Because at that point we hadn't worked with the MFRC. I hadn't really exercised my multi-purpose company. We had thoughts on how we would employ them, but we hadn't put them through a STIX validation event yet. And so I give a ton of credit to them, like Colonel King specifically. Like, he walked with every single company in the entire brigade and got to know every company. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Like, what's the best way to employ them? How are we working with the MFRC and the MPC? And then I think learning the brigade through that event, I give a ton of credit to them, because we also were fighting out of the TAC during that. And so it gave us a really good rep of fighting the TAC, battle tracking, pulling in the intel from the MFRC, and then jumping because we've been compromised. It was a solid rep. So where we could have done a much lesser Bronco Blitz, we went all in. It felt like a mini JPMRC for us. And I think the results we saw were had a lot to do with that. Yeah. We had a solid rep. We had worked with Captain Lay, the MFRC commander. We had worked sharing different reconnaissance objectives in support of the bigger, broader mission, and then actioning it, actioning the different intel that they were pulling. So it was a fantastic event. But I would say, that our training was absolutely the number two.
If you had to go right back into it, right, again, coming out of Christmas and do the whole thing all over again, what would be an area you wish you could have done a little bit better, and what would you do to kind of be better at it?
I think we all collectively at our brigade AAR said, hey, we could have done a better job communicating across battalions, because at that final, I feel like you get less and less time to plan each follow-on mission. So when we were on the defense at the end, we were definitely compressed on time, and we built a wicker chat with some leaders across the different battalions to, hey, you guys need a QRF. Hey, I'm sharing I share that boundary with you. I have an element that we can flex. And, because I feel like at the brigade, they have so much to manage that sometimes you just need, to talk to the person on your left and right. Hey, I can put a team in that area. But I think that was an area we collectively said we could do better, is just coordination between battalions. And I think, getting that tighter would have been, that's probably what I would focus on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, what I want to do is I want to transition into the last quarter, of this conversation. And, but before I do that, I also want to kind of hit on any of the stories that we had failed to kind of cover up until this point. But that last quarter is a little bit more personal. It's some of the personal things that make you the leader that you are, the family man that you are, and all that, our habits, our routines, and then things that we absolutely want to do before we get into Christmas. But is there anything that kind of fits into those first three quarters of this conversation that we absolutely should have talked about?
The one that I would say is counseling and morale checks. So it probably took the first half of my battalion command time to realize, hey, I'm really in charge of a lot of my schedule and where I spend my time. Our brigade is great about, we do a couple of meetings a week. They're not pulling us to a lot of meetings. I have a ton of freedom, and when I flipped that switch to I'm not gonna sit in a lot of internal battalion level meetings. I'm gonna actually spend a lot of time with my leaders And I built not just counseling booklets for all my lieutenants, but I made it a point to meet with them at least quarterly. And that was a game changer for me because I was able to speak into their lives more personally, and I my rule for the counselings was I do what's called a morale check the first 2 minutes of the counseling. And that's a hey, all things like work life, personal life, family life, social life, all things. How's morale on a 0 to 10 scale? And I make them give me a number, right? And it immediately cuts through the mindless, how's the weather? Oh, how's the family?
Yeah.
Speak to what really matters. And if I'm being honest, the average I get is an 8. And I say, okay, what's filling your cup? What's getting you up to an 8? What's the good things? And I say, okay, what's keeping you from a 10? And like, I listen really intently on that of, well, hey, I just moved to a new house and like, I'm trying to figure out how to find a roommate, or, hey, I don't know where I'm PCSing, or hey, the MI career course is backed up. I'm not going to go for another year. So I got to find a job. And that's where I focus. And I'm like, okay, I can fix some of that. Or in some cases, like, hey, I'm back in the 3 shop. I started in the 3 shop, like morale is super low. And I think it was below a 7. I was like, okay, man, let's look for another job that's going to make you happy. It's like, we can take the hit of the battalion. And then that lieutenant's going over to the MI battalion. He's going to go do great things because he's going MI. It's like he needed to be. And so I wish I did that from day one, is be deliberate. And I tell my lieutenants this, I said, hey, don't let this fancy counseling document prevent you from sitting down and just getting to know your squad leaders, your platoon sergeant. Like, if you don't finish your first month as a platoon leader and know that Colonel Leclerc is married with 3 kids, and that this is the stuff that is like makes him tick. Like, what else have you done that's more important than that, right? And so, like, sitting down with a blank piece of paper to me is better than waiting to have those conversations. But the counseling, I think, is the one thing that you mentioned, or that I think we didn't talk about, that I encourage folks to, like, don't get that part wrong. Like, that's what lights my fire, gives me the passion, because like I love just being able to help people's morale-o-meter, for lack of a better term, go up.
Yeah. I feel like I started off strong with this, at JPMRC and as a brigade commander, and I feel like I need to ramp it back up right about now. So like you said, you wished you had started good, and now you're starting to find that groove. I got to get back in the groove, right? Because the exercises have taken over. Yeah. We also have had such a turnover, right? We have so many new people. And so some people are getting annual counseling. Some people are like been here 6 months. They're getting their half-year counseling. Yeah. Some people are getting initial counseling, right? And it's hard to bounce back and forth between those conversations. But it's so... like I can feel it when I've missed it with some of those people, where I don't know them as well as I do some of the other people that have been with an organization. So I couldn't agree more with how valuable that is to the organization and everybody knowing. I've also, going to double down on like welcoming new people to the organization. The new people that are going to come in right after Christmas, or the new people that just came in a couple months ago. Is how do you do that? Welcome them and make them part of a team. I'm gonna steal something like what you did over there in Kauai to kind of get all those new people as part of our organization kind of ready, because we're gonna go do this in Alaska. We just did this team with here in Hawaii, but we've got a different team that'll kind of go into Alaska with a whole new crew and do it all over again. Yeah. Okay. Any other quick stories, like anything else in that kind of that area that we absolutely should have incorporated into those first couple?
I don't think a story, but just one more. Like, I think like the 25th, this division is, we have the dream team right now. And I know even the broader USERPAC team, like, which you're a part of, I just love being here. And it's just like I feel like they've stacked this team so much so that, like, whatever mission that gets thrown our way, we're going to win. So I'm super thankful, just like JPMRC was an awesome experience. I learned a ton, but it was because of the the drop-ins, like you came and you visited our talk, and L8 came out. We actually said we weren't at FOC until L8 dropped in, at the talk or the TAC because he came to visit so often. But yeah, just a phenomenal team, and I'm just super thankful to be on it.
Yeah. Okay. Now talk to me a little bit about typical habits and routines and like the things that at this point in your life, it's just part of what it is you do, and kind of to get you in the right mindset, kind of get you, to have the right attitude so that you can kind of act even close to the way we've been talking for this last, hour or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I'll speak to a day that's like, this is a good day. So again, like my faith is super important. And, I meet twice a week with Chad Taylor, who's, you work with, and we meet, we sync up, like, how's life? How can I pray for you? How can you pray for me? Like, we get into scripture a little bit. We talk like that. That's an hour Tuesday and Thursday morning that we spend, before our families are awake. You can't put a price tag on that. And I think that when we started doing that, because I think everybody can fall victim to like negative self-talk. Like something bad happens at work on a Monday afternoon or something. Like it might not be till Friday when we're going on the weekend that I have processed and like gotten over something, like maybe I'm angry the whole week. It stops on Tuesdays now. And so how I start my day, this is one of the really good days. I'll meet with Chad for an hour. We pray, we go on, we do PT. Some days I'll do the cold plunge actually before PT. I try to do it a lot. Again, we have a cold plunge. It's for everybody in the battalion at 227, and I'm proud to say that it's been there over a year now, and it's fully functioning, and it's very nice, and it's anybody can use it. So yeah, I like to do that for about 6.5 minutes before PT, and then I'll run the cold off, right? And I think it does something for me cognitively, kind of wakes me up. I don't need really coffee until like 9:30 in the morning. Do PT. I live really close to the battalion, so I'll go home to shower, get ready for work, see my kids. Sometimes, if they're not already at school, I'll see Michelle, and then I'll just go get after it. Normal work day. The best work days, doing at least 3 or 4 counselings with either my platoon leaders, platoon sergeants, and I'm telling you, it's just that will change a bad day into a great day. Just that. Do you
do the PLs and platoon sergeants together?
I don't do them together. I do them separately. When I'm doing counseling with my platoon sergeant, I always have my command sergeant major there too. Okay. Because I can't speak about boards.
How long do you talk when you talk to him?
I'd say we average about 30 minutes usually.
But because you're doing them often enough, 30 minutes you can get it done.
Mm-hmm. 30 minutes. There's been times where I've been in there an hour because there's something that happened that we got to talk about. And
every week you're putting some of those on the calendar?
Yes, every week. I would say every week with a few exceptions, like we're getting ready to go to the field, short weeks maybe. But there are definitely weeks where I'm like, hey, in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to go through all my quarterly counselings. Those days are consumed by counselings.
And it's just 30 minutes after 30 minutes after 30 minutes.
That's about average, 30. There's sometimes like I'm like, hey, we just met like 2 weeks ago. We'll do, and we're like 10 minutes and we're done. But yeah, that is a huge.
You got an adjutant that helps you set all that up?
Yes. I have a phenomenal adjutant. Yeah, he's a huge help.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So what do you got to get done before Christmas? You absolutely have to do before Christmas.
So we got to win Tropic Lightning Week for the 6th time. That's coming up. I told the battalion that we won by 74 points last year, so my goal is to win by 50 this year. So I don't. No, so that is one. And then super excited because I get to go to Japan with the whole family. We have the Holy Family Home Christmas every year. So we're sending 6 total soldiers this year. So 3 from my battalion, 3 from 127. So Teddy Teddy Borowski, Jason Chase's battalion, 3 from them. So 6 soldiers over there to help kind of play Santa, Christmas for the orphans. We collected 700 gifts across the 2 battalions last year. So I get to bring my whole family, my kids included, on Christmas Day and spend it with the orphans there. Super pumped about that. Like we're on cloud 9 kind of planning that. So really that's the big thing. And then just kind of locking in, the LRTC through next year to make sure that I'm, setting the conditions for Lieutenant Colonel Gingrich to come in the spring.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It just keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've known him, Dana, for a long time. Yeah. So now what I like to finish up with is like the so what, like everything that we've been talking about, here for this conversation, we couldn't possibly cover every single detail, through it. We get to have these conversations either doing PT, we get to have these conversations kind of out there on the PT field, or I get to see you selfishly, I get to see you a lot. And I do get a lot of control over my schedule and stuff. And, there's so much I can pull from this conversation, but the conversations that we get to have, outside. But what's the so what? Like, what if someone only listens to like this last 2 or 3 minutes, like what's the so what that you would want somebody to know about you and about what it takes to kind of become the leader that you kind of are today? Yeah.
So I think there's a John Wooden quote, which I'm going to butcher, but it has something to do with like the more powerful the position, the greater the responsibility upon that individual to make the greatest change on others, or something like that. I definitely butchered that, but battalion command has been such a fantastic ride and an opportunity to grow. And, I've constantly reminded myself, like, the influence you have in this position to, change the outcome of someone's day, like to provide encouragement, to come alongside them if they're like, they went through something pretty hard, or celebrate their successes is unlike I experienced before this point in my career. And so, but it's also where I find the greatest joy in this job. And so that's the kind of the golden, that's the crystal ball, that I think is important to tell people about their first month in battalion command, as opposed to like their last 4 months or whatever. So I think it's, just keeping it in perspective, right? And then I think we undersell as an Army. So like the H2F, I'm a huge fan of the 5 pillars. We did a study in May with our battalion, and we wrote an article. It's like, I thought it was pretty useful, but really it's the mental and the spiritual fitness side is I think there's still a lot we don't know about it. And I think spiritual warfare, mental warfare is a very real thing. And it affects everyone. It affects leaders, the highest ranks, the lowest ranks, the negative self-talk, all that. And we don't talk much about it. And so I think like that's one of the things I'm super passionate about is, like it could mean like the difference between someone, going and having an awesome Christmas and someone making a really terrible decision and like ending their life, right? Like to stop and have the conversation. And so we talk about that a lot, I think, in our battalion, like at closeout formations. And we try to remind people, I think it's really important today to remind people like about, those that went before us, people that paid the ultimate sacrifice, not to sit there and mourn them and like be super sad about it, but to like, live today because they couldn't, like their kids, like Sergeant Locklear, right, was passed from an IED. Like his kid was like 3 when he passed. He's like 18 now. He's like, and he looks exactly like his dad. I saw a photo of him and his grandpa doing the baton death march that was sent to me from another former platoon sergeant I served with. Like, it almost brought me to tears, right? And it's like, talk more about that. Yeah. Like, get guys out of this like the social media craze. Like, your mindless activities are killing us. Get them thinking about the things that, like, it's the responsibility to inspire troops has been undersold. That's a daily activity. Telling their stories, like General Foley, he's still alive. He's doing great. When I found out I was going to 227, somebody mentioned he's living in DC. I totally stalked him and found his phone number. Realized he's like a bike ride away from, I was living in Old Town. He was living in Old Town. I got a coffee with him and he gave me a signed book, but man, like his stories were incredible. He won the Medal of Honor as the company commander of Alpha Company in 227 with Sergeant Baker. And like, we brought him out like to speak to both 127 and 227. He talked about Vietnam and he talked about the climate and the decisions leading up to that day when a lot of the guys paid the ultimate sacrifice. Like hearing that, the guys were just in awe and shock. Like that's our responsibility to inspire them. And so I think I'd leave folks with that. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Like I know I get to pull a lot of that. I get inspired just by listening to you share this with me and taking the time to kind of share as much as you could in this conversation. So I really appreciate you doing this with me today.
Of course. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be on this show and benefited so much from the folks that you've interviewed. And it's been therapeutic for me to kind of hear some of their stories, and it's been great. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, they'll benefit now from hearing yours, from sharing yours and combining it with their story and with their path. Not just the people that are maybe our battalion commanders, but the people that, are thinking about doing something like that. If you can even take a little bit of what you're applying, like as a battalion commander, towards your company or towards your platoon or towards your family for that matter, if you're not even in the Army, like this stuff translates very well to regular life on inspiring people, motivating people. And that's what this whole thing is all about, right? Helping leaders better understand what's driving people these days, and to not just to serve, but to have a better life, both in the Army and outside the Army. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Thanks.
Thanks for listening today. I hope we sparked some thoughts about the people that have inspired you to be who you are today. I hope you share some of your thoughts, and better yet, demonstrate them for the people in your life. Our pursuit is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories stacked on top of each other, building like compound interest. Keep stacking these positive habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people. Please share your comments at the links in the show notes, and DM us at Teach Me to Fish podcast on Instagram or Facebook. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind.